Ciao, benvenuto. Grazie per essere qui.
Hello, and welcome to the Study Abroad Pod. Today, we'll be hearing from Ryder Hankins, University of Nevada, Las Vegas graduate and two-time USAC program alumnus. Ryder has visited all 4 USAC program sites in Italy and attended 2 of them. He spent a semester in Viterbo, Italy, and later returned for a summer program in Torino. He's got so much to say that we actually recorded this over a couple of days, so apologies all around if you're watching the video of this podcast and notice that his shirt changed. Anyways, in this episode, Ryder will be sharing his experiences as a queer person abroad, along with advice on how you can build a lasting community wherever your adventures abroad take you. Hello, everyone. I am Colette Horton, back with another episode of the Study Abroad Pod. Today, I'm here with Ryder Hankins.
Hey, Colette. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to talk about study abroad and honestly, all things Italy.
You now work at UNLV, which is fantastic. I also worked at UNLV. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I graduated UNLV in December of 2022. I doubled in international finance and marketing. I had minors in Italian studies and global entrepreneurship. And kind of what led me there was 3 separate study abroads, all in Italy. Yeah, I know that's a bit much, but I kind of had an obsession and USAC fueled that. I studied abroad originally spring of 2020, a very interesting year to study abroad in Viterbo. And then I went back in summer of 22. It's only been 2 years, but it feels so long ago. Yeah. So my study abroad, I think, started the same way that all study abroad counselors tell you not to start. They say, don't study abroad with your friends. You need to have your own personal reason for studying abroad. Don't just follow your friends. Um, Unfortunately, I didn't listen. My best friend, my freshman year, chose to study abroad in Italy. It's so funny because she is Italian. You know, she's always grew up with Italian culture. And I grew up with pasta. I love pasta. And until I went there, I didn't even know what al dente pasta was. I overcooked everything. So I followed my friend. Um, and within the year of planning and kind of choosing locations, I did fall in love with Italy. So it did become a personal choice. Um, but it was so funny because she and I both wanted to originally study abroad in Torino because we heard so many great things. And individually in our meetings, we found out that we both couldn't study abroad. We didn't have the prereqs of the classes we wanted to take or X, Y, and Z. And we ended up finding out that Viterbo was a better location. And especially for me, because I wanted to become fluent in another language. And Viterbo offers actually 2 years of foreign language in 1 semester. And that does sound very intensive, but the intensivity of it all actually really helps you. But we both individually chose to study abroad at Viterbo, and for about 4 months, she and I were so afraid to tell each other that we were going to be studying abroad separately. So one day I just spit it out to her, and she's like, "Oh my God, wait, same. We're both going to be in Viterbo." So the whole thing ended up working. We both fell in love with it. It's a very historic, older city, very small, which I think made our experience very intimate. There wasn't a lot of tourists, so a lot of people spoke Italian. We kind of were dropped into the daily lives of all of these people, especially in such a small town where everybody knows each other. And it was just such a great time. And I know the impending question of how did that all work out when COVID started less than 3 months after we dropped in. Um, it was challenging. It was different. It was definitely heartbreaking when the news that our study abroad time was going to get cut short because of an obvious global pandemic. But thankfully, actually, even though it was such an unprecedented thing to happen, USAC had my back, got me home safely, and got me home in such a way that I decided 2 years later, we have to go back. Because Italy had such an impression on me. I think not even just the specifics of and the beauty of Italy, but just being in another country, kind of having to deal with that culture shock and just kind of getting put in a place where everything is different. It was such a shock to me that, everybody takes a break from noon to 3 o'clock, and you can't even get dinner or lunch at a restaurant because the restaurants are closed for lunch. Um, those differences really pushed me to try to go again because I don't know, it stuck with me.
A lot of students talk about, the push that study abroad can be. What were the biggest changes that you noticed in yourself?
I think one of the biggest things that I took advantage of when I first started to study abroad or first thought about it, especially like packing and planning to get there, is you're essentially getting put in a new environment with um, every single person is new, everything is new. So you can reinvent yourself. You can try new things. You can dye your hair. Personally, wanted to try painting my nails. I wanted to just try something new, something that I may not have had the courage of doing in my everyday life here. Give it a try. I think because I was so like I painted my nails, I was very,
Yeah.
very out and open. 2 years later, when Viterbo established their first like Pride,
Mhm.
I was the first person they followed. I was like, I'm sorry, I
Oh,
cannot make it.
that's so that's so cool.
It was so funny.
That's so awesome.
I think a big thing that you have to be careful with, but also realistic with, is cultural awareness. Because being in another country, yes, it's scary, and yes, you hear these things about pickpockets and getting stopped in the street, and it makes studying abroad or going international, especially at a age, really scary. But you need to be realistic with it in the sense of yes, it's scary, but don't let that fear build up into something that's not real. Because yes, pickpocketing is scary. Yes, it happens in Rome. It happens in every major European city, but it also happens in every major US city. You hear the same things about places like New York, places like Miami. If you've ever heard any of the horror stories about spring break in Miami, I mean, I think we're on the same par. So the only difference here is that it's a different culture. You may be experiencing a different language. And yes, those things can be scary, but they're manageable. Um, and especially just like in America, be who you are, be confident in who you are, but also be safe. Um, I think that doesn't mean not being, not wanting to paint your nails, but just know the surroundings that you're in and be mindful of kind of everything. And there are negative experiences that you have in studying abroad, but that shouldn't, you know, take away any of the benefits of it. The experience that I'm talking about is in Viterbo, very small town. Um, there was a couple, honestly, high school bullies, and especially because it was a small town, maybe they hadn't left. They had a different views than I did. Um, and sometimes they'd be antagonizing. And I'll say yes, I was um nervous in some aspects of that, but what I found the most surprising was the community that I had built up within not even my study abroad friends, but my local friends. They, went out of their way to make sure that I was safe. They stood up for me. They made sure that those people didn't bother me again. Um, so it really showed me that yeah, I mean other countries may be different, but we're alike in so many more ways than we're different. And if you create a community out there, not just of the people that you study abroad with, the other people that are from America, but make those crucial connections with the locals, people your age, not only will it benefit you from years to come to have friends in another country and kind of enrich your experience, but you'll create a community that makes you safer, a community that makes you feel better, and a community that has your back. And at the end of the day, I think that's the biggest thing that scares people from studying abroad is that they don't have their sense of community. But a sense of community is something that you create. And I think if you created such an amazing one here, what makes you think you can't do that again somewhere else?
I don't think a lot of students necessarily identify that lack of community as the source of their fear, but that's what it boils down to. A lot of times when students are nervous, they're nervous about making friends. They wonder what they're going to do if they get lost. You can't exactly call your mom and dad and have them come pick you up when you're thousands of miles away. I think that, making new connections in a new place in a new language can be intimidating. It can be, not prioritized by students sometimes, I think, trying to meet locals or get involved in their local community just because they're so excited about seeing the new city and they go see it with their new American friends, their classmates who are sharing that, super excitement and joy. But there's just so many benefits that connecting with locals can bring you, professionally down the line, personally in terms of growth, and, you know, seeing a whole new world view from someone who was born and raised somewhere completely unlike where you were. I mean, you also mentioned the food, the pasta.
Oh my
You
gosh.
learned how to cook it the true Italian way.
Yes, I think that community is such an important aspect because, when you look at all of those things that you love about a country, architecture, history, the city itself, the food, those were all created by people. And those are the connections and the reason that you're going is you're not going to be changed just by the food. I mean, the tomatoes out there, the cheese out there was amazing, but my heart was changed not just because of how good the Parmesan was, but because the conversations that I had with the people that were behind those foods, learning that, to make balsamic vinegar or actually, to make mozzarella cheese, um, it's a specific process that has been passed down generation from generation. And the cows that make the milk to make the cheese um, are generations of only that cow. And they only eat the grass that hasn't been untouched because that is a human tradition. And I think once you make those connections with people, that's when you'll have the most impact on your study abroad. The people that I studied abroad with, I still talk to on a daily basis. I mean, I feel like I got to be a side character in my friend's Lazy McGuire dreams because she met her now boyfriend out there. She's been living for 3 or 4 years, and it really, if you open yourself up not only to the people in your study abroad group, the other Americans, but the people that the city that you're in, you'll have your life changed in so many different ways. That friend, she has connections in Italy. I think the first year that we were able to go back, I mean, she moved out there, but she invited us over for Christmas because she couldn't make it home. And I had a 2-week Christmas and New Year's time, the time of my life in Rome. Um, I got to experience a traditional Italian Christmas with in the north they do a either 9 or 12 course seafood dish or meal for Christmas Eve, and that getting to eat with her family when me and her were the only ones that spoke English. It was such a surreal experience because I really got to be dropped in to a life that was different than my own. And those connections, I think, are really the biggest takeaways.
I'm having all these movie scenes fly through my head as you're describing Italian Christmas and the process of balsamic vinegar, all of this. It sounds like you had your own, maybe not Lizzie McGuire, right? Because you didn't run to Rome with Paolo, but you know, maybe your own eat, pray, love of of Italy was
Yes.
happening a little bit.
I also, I don't know. I feel like earned a sense of confidence and um and that comes from kind of the challenges that study abroad has. Um, because you're being put in a new environment, everything is new and you have to kind of learn from the basics again. I mean, when I dropped in, I didn't know how to speak Italian at all. I had not taken a single class. So when I was walking around, I thought that every store was called Sale. No, that's the Italian word for sale. I didn't know. Well, Sale, and it was Sanzi, but I could be wrong. Don't Italian learners don't come for me. Um, but it was it was embarrassing because I was new and I was learning all of these new things. And I think that being able to overcome even those small things like, oh my God, I just got my own train ticket for the day. Oh my God, I ordered that entire breakfast. I got my cappuccino, I got my pastry without a sweat. And when you first study abroad, doing anything is going to be very difficult. Grocery stores, if you've studied abroad, you know how difficult getting anything in a grocery store is. I think one
It
time I
really is.
bought what I thought was toothpaste was actually some type of lotion, and we learn by trial by error. But once you overcome those challenges, you realize, wait, I really can do this. It's really just putting my mind to it, and I think that carried on in my day-to-day life once I came back, because if I can do that, if I can travel all over Europe or all over Italy, by myself in a language that I don't speak, what makes you think that I can be stopped here in America? I can do anything.
You totally can. I mean, accomplishing these tasks, even though they seem so simple, and, when you take them out of context, grocery shopping, most college students can do that. But, you add in all these hurdles of unfamiliar signs, unfamiliar language, unfamiliar processes. And once students become self-sufficient in their host town, I think it's such a pivotal moment for them when they accomplish these small tasks of grocery shopping, of not getting lost on the way home, of finding their new favorite bakery. And it's amazing to see the confidence that blossoms when you're able to take care of yourself in a foreign country. Nothing can stop you. You're completely right. So, what brought you back to Italy?
I was in a minor program here at UNLV called the Global Entrepreneurship Experience, where they send you abroad for 2 to 3 weeks at the end of your 3 years in the program. And they worked with USAC actually to set up the country that was randomly selected for me and for my cohort was Italy. And it kind of felt full circle because I studied abroad in Viterbo, but with this trip, I was able to see the 3 other study abroad locations. So I could technically say that I've studied abroad in all 4 USAC Italy locations. Although Reggio Emilia, Verona, you were beautiful, but you only got 2 days of my time. Although I could give 10 years of my life to Verona and Reggio Emilia. We got to do a 14-day trip with them, and we got to see all of northern Italy, just kind of talking to the new business owners. And it was really interesting to, especially as a global entrepreneurship minor and a business major at the time, I can now say business graduate, that we got to connect with local businesses. And in America, I think international business is this huge thing because leaving is such a big thing for US travelers. Whereas a 45-minute drive, you could be in a country like 3 borders from there. So international business is very different, and having that connection was really interesting and something unique that I think USACA had offered us. And then I got to finally do a 6-week summer course in Torino, which Torino will always have my heart.
I think it's also kind of another proponent for, learning the language, and also learning that, communication is so much more than just words.
Oh, I was exactly just about to say that. I think another aspect and way to take on learning a foreign language is it's not just the words. It is the lingo, it's the way that you talk, it is just the social cues. Um, Something that I always go on about when that like changed my mind when I first started learning Italian is, and I know this is probably such a small thing, but in English, you say, I am cold, I am hot, I am hungry. Those are things that you characterize within yourself. But in Italian, it is o fame, o stanco, uh, why am I for o caldo? It's I have heat, I have hunger, and I have tiredness. Those are aspects that you have. So I think those are fundamental things in which they look at the world differently. And if you understand those different social cues and the way that you know, view the world, I think you can then participate in that society in a better way. It comes from more authentic self instead of just trying to use Google Translate. Because Google Translate, I think, is a great tool, but it is also just that, a tool. And we're people, we're so much different than that. And the way that we communicate and the way that we use language is a bit deeper. So don't be afraid to dig deeper. And I think that'll help, especially when making friends.
So your friends who you study abroad with, who you still talk with, where are they now?
Oh my gosh, that I think is one of my favorite things, especially post study abroad, is you then have this network of people all over the states that you get to kind of watch and grow into or grow up with. Um, a lot of them are actually back east, but in counting down the days, I believe it's 55 days. My Torino study abroad group is going to do an kind of an anniversary meetup or reunion, I add. Um, we most of us have all graduated, if not they're in their final years or their senior year. So we're all going to meet up. I think our 2 year reunion in Nashville. I am super excited.
That
And
will be
some
so
of
fun.
my oh my gosh, we wish that we could do it in Italy. But I think we've been talking maybe our 5 year reunion in Italy. Give everyone some time to kind of join the corporate life or join the work life and make some money first. And a couple of my friends that I studied abroad 2020 with, I think I had mentioned, one still lives in Italy. She went back. She actually got her master's there, um, which helped her to establish residency. And now she works for the UN World Food Bank. She got her master's in, I think it was either political science or social work. And now she has an amazing career. She gets to travel all over the world. I had another friend. She did I believe it's the Berkeley. I don't know if it's in the School of Business or the School of Music, but the degree is on kind of live music events, and she did it in the Valencia, Spain campus. So now she obviously gets to work in such she has an amazing line of work. Um, but some of my friends that didn't make it abroad, they're doing amazing things all over. And my favorite thing is at least every year I try to do at least 2 or 3 trips where I visit some of them. I've done Portland, I've done Chicago, I've done DC, I've done Baltimore. And it just gives you other reasons to travel and study abroad.
It's always fun to have an extra place to crash, especially when you're in those first few years getting out of college and you're getting your feet under you. Um, Saving some money is always good. That's all
That and you
super
find
fantastic.
all in the same way, like when I went back to Italy and studied abroad, or after I studied abroad and met up with some of my friends that lived there, they made my New Year's in Rome so amazing. Um, because instead of going to all the touristy things or, getting myself trapped in something where there's a million people, I really just spent the night with them. We got to hang out on the rooftop and watch the fireworks. And then here in America, um, like when I went to Portland and visited a friend who studied abroad with me in Viterbo, she took me to the best Italian restaurant in Portland, and um, something that I probably would have never found. And in Chicago too, I've had some really good nights because of the people that I met in Torino, ended up relocating. So I think that's another thing about community is just because you created a community out there doesn't mean it needs to end there. You carry it over here, create like those lasting friendships, and I don't know. That's one secret to studying abroad that no one talks about is once you come back, the benefits that it brings you.
I completely agree with that. That is 100% accurate. I still video chat with my neighbor from my apartment in Lyon. She, Jude, if you're listening, thanks for being so wonderful. I 100% agree. Personally and professionally, the connections you make abroad can have such a huge impact on where you are now. I mean, personally, obviously, now I work with USAC. That opportunity would not have been available to me had I not studied abroad. And then I actually got pretty active on campus once I returned from study abroad. I started working in the international programs office. I know because this is how I originally met you, Ryder. Secret, nobody knows. I met Ryder a couple years ago at a USAC alumni panel at UNLV. I think you mentioned that kind of springboarded you into working with UNLV as well, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I'd always been a pretty involved person at UNLV pre-study abroad. But after coming back and having such honestly like a vivid experience, I it propelled me to get more involved not only with university, but specifically with study abroad, because I was somebody who I'm a first generation student. I'm also an independent student at UNLV. So I'm going to school kind of or I went to school myself, if that makes sense. Um, I don't know if that makes sense, but um, I found it very difficult, and when I first started, I didn't think that I could study abroad. I thought that it was an impossibility, but I tried. I got to see what resources were available to me, and I wanted that to be shared with everyone else because if I can do it, you can too.
Why did you think it was an impossibility? I had the same thought as a fellow independent
Yes.
student.
So
I had the same thought.
I well, because at first I didn't know how I was gonna pay for school, in America, and I also didn't think that I think the looking at studying abroad, looking at the cost, and looking at all that you had to do to set up for it, it looked impossible. Once it all looks so daunting, but the way USAC broke it up, and honestly, the way that I broke it up with myself is everything is just a piece. And if I can get this one piece done, then I'm one step closer. I don't need to get the 100% of it done, but I can get 5% of it done today. Um, and that mindset kind of changed the way that I not only viewed like studying abroad, but viewed daunting tasks. And that's something that I wanted to share, especially because I think the stereotype of studying abroad is that your parents pay for it if possible, and not knocking people who can. That is an awesome resource for you, but it's available for everyone. And I wanted everyone to have that. So I got involved in studying abroad um, on the alumni side, um, which another sneak preview, we're trying to set up an alumni um, network for study abroad here at UNLV. So if you are a UNLV alumni, reach out to me. We're trying to make that happen. But I got involved. I got talking at a certain events where I got to meet you about all of our different experiences, and it was great because you know I studied abroad in Italy and I loved it, but there is a part of me that wished I studied abroad in Leon. There is a part of me that wished I studied abroad in Costa Rica. And, getting to connect with those alumni was an amazing experience because you got to live vicariously through them. Like I never surfed in Costa Rica or, did wine tasting in San Sebastian, but I know people who did. I got to talk to them and getting to hear how much they loved it and how much that experience changed them. I feel like having those conversations with and sharing that kind of helped me, especially when you come back and you have that inevitable kind of like reverse culture shock. It's very hard to come back, and making that connections really helped, I think. And we're getting a little bit off topic here, so let me get back into my involvement. But I think all of that came to say is it created another community for me of studying abroad, of people who had similar experiences, of people who just wanted to sit around and talk about it. And I know that, when you come back, all your friends are like, oh my God, we get it. You went to Madrid, you studied abroad. And you know what? It is so much more than that. And it's nice to be able to talk to people who had that same experience, but also don't get tired of it because I can get it. I get it. Um, but having people who, with similar experiences, it's awesome. So that's how I got involved. And then I just, continued to go through. And I think getting involved, just period is really helpful for you. Not only like for your resume and putting another thing on there, but the experiences that you have, it all helps you to grow as a person. So one thing led to another. And because of my experiences at studying abroad, and the confidence that I earned, I decided to apply to be commencement speaker. And actually, I talked a lot about studying abroad in my speech and how that changed me. But because of that, you know, the coins keep flipping in the right direction and the right people heard my speech. And that's how I got my job here at UNLV. I love my degree and it did help me get the job. But the thing I think that really drove everything home was my extracurricular experiences, which were inspired from my time abroad. So I honestly directly have USAC to thank for my first job post grad.
Well, that is very generous. You are so kind for saying that.
I realized after we recorded the other day that some of the insights that you shared were very similar to that of a former student that we had who created a beautiful video a few years ago. His name is Ami, and I was just hoping I could get your thoughts on this clip. I included his intro and some snippets that really tied in with what you shared.
I'd love to.
Great. Thanks so much.
While studying abroad was one of the hardest things I ever did in my life, it gave me a few of the tools I needed to create the life that I now live, the life of my dreams. My name's Ami. My pronouns are he, him. I'm currently making this video from Bali, Indonesia. I'm a Black, queer, and trans world traveler, content creator, and speaker. But more importantly than any of that, I've intentionally created a life that I feel fulfilled by, that is walking on a path of authenticity and liberation. This video isn't my attempt to blindly convince anyone that looks like me or maybe share some of my identities to go study abroad and that will change and fix all your problems. I cried sometimes while I was abroad because I was scared that I didn't belong anywhere. I always felt out of place at my PWI back in the States. And now I was in this foreign country, thousands of miles away, feeling even more alone and even more that I don't belong. But what if I told you, even after experiencing that and so many other things, and knowing what I know now, that I would do it again? One of the tools I gained from studying abroad was the realization I was capable of way more than I could even perceive myself to be. In Thailand, I had some of the most beautiful experiences I ever had in my life.
Did any of that resonate with you?
I think what Ami references is really important because I think as somebody who's queer, somebody who just identifies different from the norm, studying abroad can be challenging, especially when thinking about things like homophobia, things like hate, and it can discourage a lot of people from studying abroad. But I think that as somebody who also identifies as queer, I think that these experiences that study abroad gives you really helps you to find your confidence, really helps you to build that backbone that you need when you come back to this institution. Because when I was in Italy, I did feel like I didn't belong. I did notice that I was one of the only people of color in that whole town, and at first that was scary. But when I realized, you know what, I am taking up space here, and I am loving it, and I deserve this space. And if I deserve this space in Italy, I deserve this space at home. And I think that's the strength that I found the most. Because yes, I will say that there were times when I also was scared, or I also felt that, maybe I shouldn't portray the whole part of who I was. But when I persevered through that, I realized that there is a confidence in me that I need to have. There is a part of me that shouldn't be hidden away. And there was a strength that I found from being abroad. And that completely changed my life, as it looks like it changed Ami's life. And I think that's something that not a lot of people talk about, especially when studying abroad, is the strength, the courage, the resilience that you find within yourself, because you get through this kind of controlled challenge that study abroad gives you. You're safe because you have your resident directors, you have a whole plethora of a community around you of other American students who's gone with you, and you're not the first person in that country who's experiencing this. So everything you experience will be unique to you, but in the grand scheme of things, the resident directors, the whole team at USAC, the whole team of everyone who's helped you to study abroad is equipped with the tools necessary to help you. So it's just about you gaining the experience, you gaining the courage, the knowledge to be authentically who you are, to take up space, to not be afraid, and to not be apologetic about it. And I think that is something that Ami's talking on, that I really want people who are thinking of studying abroad, who might be fearful because they identify a certain way, or they think that they will not be accepted in their other country, to just take that step, because the results that you'll find from studying abroad, persevering through that fear, is tenfold more than what you think it could be. I think it's one of the best experiences that anyone can have. And if you have the ability to, even if you don't think that you can, the worst you could do is, walk into that study abroad office and see what opportunities there are. Because don't tell yourself no unless you've tried every option. Getting to see different ways people live lives, different ways people view the world, something in me. a thirst to kind of see more of the world.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Well, on that note, Ami really has a way with words, so I would love to end with another quote from his film, You Belong. Here is Ami King.
To the person watching this that maybe has one or multiple and intersectional marginalized identities, you're divine. You deserve to be anywhere in this world that you want to go. You deserve to experience every single piece of beauty this world has to offer. Now, I'm not going to lie to you and tell you that those extra steps and obstacles and decisions that you have to make and go through will be easy. But what I will say is just because you have to go through them doesn't mean you don't deserve to get there too. It doesn't change the fact that you belong there too.
Thanks for listening to the Study Abroad Pod, a podcast brought to you by University Studies Abroad Consortium. Please listen, subscribe, and review us on Buzzsprout or wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow USAC on all your favorite social media channels at Study Abroad USAC, and if you have an idea for a future episode, or you want to learn more about study abroad, you can email us at studyabroad@usac.edu.